Good morning. I'm Shannon Hames and I'm from Hull & Chandler and just want to tell you a little bit about our firm. Hull & Chandler is a client-centered law firm providing legal services to individuals, families, businesses, and nonprofits in Charlotte, North Carolina and throughout the Carolinas. Our award-winning attorneys help out clients resolve problems and find solutions. Our firm specializes in business and contract law, employment law, civil litigation, estates, wills, trusts, and personal injury, commercial real estate and lending law, and nonprofit public charity law. If anyone is interested in learning more, please check out our website at hullandchandler.com and schedule a consultation with one of our award-winning attorneys. The law firm of Hull & Chandler is proud to sponsor the Leadership Series, a program where Hull & Chandler attorney Rocky Cabagnot interviews local and regional leaders in the nonprofit, private, and public sectors to discuss the real-world interplay of law, business, and social dynamics within the context of our continuously changing times. At our firm, his practice helps nonprofits stay legally compliant, avoid legal problems, and resolve legal problems when they come up. Rocky provides legal services to the nonprofit sector through the Fractional General Counsel Program or by providing subscription legal services so nonprofits can always have access to quality legal counsel when they need it. Whether it's to review a contract or file a lawsuit on behalf of a nonprofit, Rocky is a former executive director of a community action agency, and he's not a stranger to today's topic. So take it away, Rocky.
Well, thank you, Shannon, and thank you, everybody, for coming on today's to webcast on a Wednesday, and a Wednesday morning for that matter, too, because normally we start at 1, but today, speaking of our topic, I'm actually in the wonderful city of Wilmington doing board and policy council training for coastal community action for this day, and so I'm broadcasting live from Wilmington. But what's today's topic? It's Head Start, right? So from New York City to DC to Oklahoma to cities even here in North Carolina, cities and states are opting to fund universal pre-K. So I know we just said Head Start, but we're going to kind of differentiate a little bit for 3- and 4-year-olds. Now, why? Well, ever since the mid-20th century, we've had studies that have shown that early learning initiatives boost life outcomes for youth in America. And this evidence came to life when the Head Start program was started in the 1960s under LBJ during the War on Poverty. A number about 20 years later, we expanded that to the early Head Start to cover 0 to 3 children. But these are all low-income children, right? And so universal means, well, universal. So recently, President Biden has announced support for universal pre-K. Publicly supported starting at age 3. Now, his proposal asks for high quality curriculum and, quote, on-the-job coaching for teachers. Now, obviously, with my background in Head Start, one could argue that, well, we've already got a high quality curriculum and a on-the-job coaching for teachers in the Head Start and Early Head Start program. But additionally, President Biden's proposal is asking for at least to pay early childhood teachers in this universal pre-K in line with K through 12 teachers, at least at $15 minimum wage. But so if we've got some cities here in North Carolina that are already committed to the universal pre-K idea. We've got some states committed to the universal pre-K idea. So here in North Carolina, how do we get to universal pre-K? So joining me today are 2 representatives from the North Carolina Head Start Association. We have their operations manager, Christy Jones, and the president of the North Carolina Head Start Association, Terry David. Now, in addition to their responsibilities to the North Carolina Head Start Association, Christy is a legislative advocate with New Frame and obviously has a perspective about what goes on in Raleigh, and currently we are in session, about issues impacting things such as universal pre-K and that movement towards that in North Carolina. In addition to his duties as president of the North Carolina Head Start Association, Terry David is also executive director of Families and Communities Rising, which is the Head Start, Early Head Start grantee for Durham and I believe Orange County as well. And so at least from what I understand, in Durham County, there is a universal pre-K. And so it will be interesting to hear that perspective, how Head Start and Early Head Start cohabitate with this movement for universal pre-K. So Christy and Terry, thank you for taking the time to join us here on the Leadership Series.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So I always start each show kind of with I take a question from my friend Patton McDowell, who is a nonprofit consultant here in Charlotte and has a great podcast. So if you're really interested in learning more about nonprofit leadership, you should check out his iTunes podcast, Your Path to Nonprofit Leadership. But so here's my question for both of you, and you can kind of decide who wants to answer it. Christy and Terry, what was your path to nonprofit leadership and to the Head Start program?
Okay, if it's okay, Christy, I'll go first. And I'd say my path is unique in that as a kid, I went to Head Start.
Okay.
I attended Head Start. I like to tell the story, and I am the 17th of 18 children. And I know, and I grew up and experienced poverty. And so that's kind of where I got my start. But I went off in a different career field. I was in the Air Force. I served as an intelligence specialist, but I also found myself doing a lot of work in human resources and staffing. And my experience was that many adults were not, I would say, properly prepared to enter the workforce. And I think I had an epiphany and decided that what I've been called to do maybe was greater than I even realized. And I resigned a job that I thought was right for me, but I felt like I wasn't making the optimal impact. And I started looking. I wanted to work with younger people, but I had no idea I'd be working with really little people. And so I heard about an opportunity with Head Start and was hired as a director in Charlottesville, Virginia. And that brought me back to my roots, right? Where now I could really have an opportunity to impact children and families in a way that would cause them to potentially be more prepared. And I am grateful for the opportunity because I too benefited from Head Start. And there are, I think, some amazing outcomes, just some empirical evidence, about the intervention that Head Start, the services I was provided. But, my goal is that our organization where I'm the CEO, as well as the North Carolina Head Start Association, would do the very same thing, that we would continue to make a difference to serve children and families in a way that's meaningful, that would promote outcomes that would cause them to be better citizens, if that makes sense. So.
Okay.
My path started when I was in high school, really. Back then, they had a child care program in the school, and I enrolled in it because I had an interest in young children at the time. So I would go to the Child Development Center, help open the center, then go to high school, then go back for my internship, and then go back after school. So I started there, and then I got my elementary degree for K-6 from High Point University. So I taught in the public school system for quite a while. I started as a teacher assistant while raising my children, and then went to the evening degree program to get my undergrad. And then I also have a master's in special ed, because while teaching kindergarten was the most of the time of my service in public school, I just had a love for them as well. And so then actually, the company I work for now, Brian Lewis is the founder and CEO, and he was starting a lobbying and consulting firm. And I felt like at the time that I needed to advocate on a different level for children. And so I started working with him, and we were working with Head Start. So I just started with Head Start, just doing some of the pictures and videos for them and that kind of thing, and just got ingrained with them and just loved it so much. And when the opportunity came that they needed someone to take lead on planning their activities, planning their events and that kind of thing, and still working on the advocacy piece, our firm decided to submit a proposal and they accepted. And so I am just so grateful to be part of this great organization. Advocating for children and families is my passion now. And I'm raising a grandchild that's 7 years old. And so just the early education piece is just so important. I see it on a daily basis, not only in my work, but in my personal life as well. So thank you.
Okay. Well, so let's talk a little bit about the North Carolina Head Start Association. So, and we'll obviously talk about Head Start and the landscape, but tell us a little bit about this, the association and its purpose and how it kind of fits into the Head Start early childhood scheme of things.
So the Head Start Association, we have about 54 grantees in our state. Our budget in our state for our grantees is just over $221 million. We serve more than 26,000 children in the state. So that's changing a bit because of new grant opportunities. So those numbers could be a little off, but we receive funding, of course, from the federal government that goes to our goes to grantees. And primarily our goal as the association, as Christy mentioned in a bit, is to be a voice and to be an advocate for all 54 grantees. In addition, we provide technical training and assistance for grantees through conferences. We do a lot of different things. I like to talk about one of the, I think, cool things that we've done is there's this new, or not new, 2011, this whole designation renewal system came about. So one of the things we do is we help fund agencies when they're writing their grant or finding someone to support their activities to maintain and continue to provide services to children and families. But I say we're a big network, and professional development is at the heart of what we do, and advocacy. Christy and her team, we have an advocacy chair as well, but Christy and her team do a lot of work and also try to support grantees when they're doing things. It may be to publicize and to help market some of the great things we do. I think one of the challenges at times, Rocky, is that we're not telling everyone the services we provide and how we are really supporting children and families in our state. So that's something that New Frame helps us to do, is to get out the word, talk about grantees, and talk about how we're serving children and families. Christy, what did I miss? Did I want to share anything else?
About the association, I would say no. We also try to, like during the pandemic, when the grantees, a lot of them were shut down or working virtually, and many of them still are, we wanted to support them. And so twice a month, well, at the beginning, it was like every week we were getting on a call, asking them what they needed, what support they needed, and that kind of thing. So just trying to stay as close as a family as we could, because we had not seen it, and we haven't seen each other in person since January of 2020. So 2020. So we haven't seen, I'm getting confused now with how many times we've had to delay things, but and we're going to have our first in-person meeting in June. And I keep telling them every week when I see them on our calls, I can't wait till June to see everybody's face, because, it's been hard on some of them, because we've had new leadership, new directors start. And, we always try to be there in person as much as we can to help support them. But we have offered, the bi-weekly calls now, and we've done some training for them throughout the pandemic. We've had people come on and train, to keep their skills up, keep them informed, and that kind of thing. So that's all. I just wanted to add that. So.
And one last thing, Rocky, I want to say, we've been in existence now for about 50 years, our Head Start Association. So we've been around for a while supporting grantees.
And I can also vouch for the Head Start Association, because as Shannon said, for a little over 2 years, I spent time running a community action agency that was a early Head Start grantee. And Number one, it's not for the faint of heart. Okay, so it's like, well, why did you go back to practicing law? Because that was too hard. Okay, I'm gonna put that out there. You know, I have less gray hairs now. You know, because I'm not running Head Start anymore. It is not for the faint of heart, right? I mean, it's because it is such valuable work, and because of the federal dollars that come in there, the amount of monitoring, the amount of accountability, audits, you name it, it's all in there. And so one of the things that would thank the association was is that when I took over the action agency, it was between my stint as a law professor, happened to a school that's no longer here, and coming back into practice of law, I got the opportunity to run this this Head Start a community action agency. So it obviously has a lot of other programs, but Head Start, if any community action agency has Head Start, it's the largest program you've got. No questions asked. There's no other program you're going to run that's going to be larger than Head Start. But, like many programs, particularly after, and I think you mentioned the designation renewal system in 2007, the Head Start Act was amended, and I think it was a Bush initiative, but it followed through in Obama, that they wanted more accountability into the Head Start program. So prior to 2007, if you were a grantee, you more or less held it for life. You were a grantee for life, but unless you did something really bad, really, really bad. But they started something called the designation renewal system, or unaffectionately called recompetition, right? So first they moved to 5-year grants, right? So number one, it's not a lifetime grant. It turned into a 5-year grant. And at the end of your 5-year grant, you'd have to recompete if you were found to be have a deficiency in any of these various areas, whether it's fiscal or obviously treatment of children or other type of issues that are listed. It's like about a list of 5. Now they have recently amended the requirements for or the criteria for being sent to the recompetition dungeon. As you can tell, I have still some trauma from that period.
I hear it.
But I would say that the North Carolina Head Start Association, if you are a grantee and you haven't joined, or you're not in good standing, get in good standing, because they were very supportive of us in our recompetition grant, because you have to hire a grant writer. Let's just face it, and grant writers aren't cheap. And so the North Carolina Head Start Association gave us some funding to help us secure a very quality grant writer who helped us keep, our grant. Because if that is, that's just the facts there. And again, as far as training and conferences and such, it's very good that we're getting back to live, because I know as a neophyte executive director who was above, I had a Head Start director, but you have to learn about this, the materials and resources of the North Carolina Head Start Association. I mean, I met with Christy, in Salisbury, where I was running a number of times, talking about legislative advocacy issues that I was looking for assistance with. So it's a great program. And like Terry said, it probably hasn't done as, isn't out, because all the individual programs are so boisterous and have their own voice. But the Head Start Association does provide assistance when you need it. And so thank you in that regard. And just a plug, because I told you I'd make the plug, it is a 501c3 to Head Start Association. So you can send a donation that you can get a tax deduction for, and you can support the resources that they're providing to other grantees, but also really the education that they're providing. When they have these conferences, they do bring in trainers, they bring in people from all over the country, specialists in areas to help these programs stay in compliance. Because like I told you, it's hard to run a Head Start program. There might not be a harder job in America than running a Head Start program.
Yet I like to say this, Rocky, that other than the military, Head Start is the most regulated federal government funded program.
I will not. I mean, I have not been in the military, but I can say that, practicing law, running Head Start, where am I now? So let's just.
And I think that that it's hard because of the services we provide. And I don't mean that hard in a negative way. I mean, that there's just a lot. It's a hard job and a very time consuming, because we are community-based, comprehensive early education program that gives young children from at-risk backgrounds the skills they need to be successful in school and life. So, and like it was alluded to earlier, Head Start's been in existence since 1965, but then early Head Start has been around for 25 years. So that helps us remain committed to ensuring children, regardless of their circumstances at birth, have an opportunity to also achieve success in school and life. So, and we're in all 100 counties, and, you know, we do work with at-risk students as well. That is part of our compliance. We have to serve children with disabilities. So we serve children with disabilities, at-risk families, children living in poverty, homelessness, migrant, seasonal. We have, you know, we employ over 6,000 people across the state in our centers.
I would say definitely in particularly rural counties, you know, the Head Start program is probably one of your major employers. You know, so from an economic development standpoint, support for the Head Start program, because we got 100 counties here, you know, and it's not all Mecklenburg and Guilford, you know, and Wake County. You know, there's probably maybe 95 other counties there that are right there, tier one kind of, you know, places. And Head Start, you know, this is really an anchor employer for a lot of these counties.
Right, and some of our programs are just home-based. So they go into the home, and then they may have a site for them also to come in, and they can work with their children while, you know, getting some advice on how to do things with their children as well. So it's some center-based, and we also do childcare partnerships. So we partner with local childcare centers also, but they have to go by our standards, but we also partner.
Well, it's a question. So on that childcare thing, because when I took over at the Community Action Agency, and I said, well, we have a Head Start, and I had somebody said, well, how's it running a childcare program? And I was like, wait a second. And I would like for you to answer that question, because I think there is a common idea out there that Head Start is a childcare program. I mean, just you know, just like a Tiny Tots or something like that. And maybe this would be an opportunity for both of you to kind of explain to the audience, who can maybe explain to others, that what is the difference between the Head Start, early Head Start program and your typical, you know, obviously licensed childcare program?
Christy, you want to go first? Christy, you want me to go first? Doesn't matter.
You can go first.
So I'll talk about that some. I like to say we are a lot more than your childcare program. You know, one of the first things I like to talk about is that we have a research-based curriculum. That is, I think, one of the hallmarks of Head Start and early Head Start services. You know, family well-being, I would say, is one of the big things I would also set us apart. Meaning, when I say family well-being, you know, we employ, many programs employ social workers or folks with the similar credentials, where they're really supporting family engagement, male engagement, where we're trying to get fathers more acclimated and involved. You know, I talked about a little bit about the curriculum, but we, you know, one of the big curriculums that is used in Head Start is creative curriculum, and there's a teaching strategies goal that measures outcomes for children. So we focus on children's readiness for school. You know, individualized learning experiences is important, you know, where we're measuring and looking at social well-being, emotional well-being, language and literacy skills, cultural awareness, you name it. And so the cool thing with Christy mentioned this a little bit, we have this thing, what we call early Head Start CCP, or child care partnerships. And the goal was to improve child care in our community, right? So we are working side by side with child care centers and holding them accountable to the same standards that Head Start and early Head Start have. I mean, to have these great outcomes. So I like to talk about that because, you know, I've worked with some child care centers, and this is not to say anything bad about them. I want to, you know, be clear about that. But what we do is a bit different because we're focusing on the whole family, not just the education of a child like most child care centers. You know, one of the big, another big hallmark of Head Start is we're doing home visits, right?
Mhm.
So we're literally going in the homes and working with families with home visits. We're doing, you know, helping families to set what we call a family goal plan, where they are setting goals for their family and having outcomes, you know, that they will transition to kindergarten and be ready for school, and also the schools will be ready for them, because I think that's we don't talk about that enough. I think we teach parents how to advocate for themselves and their family, and so I think a lot of what we do is about, again, to help families to be better off as a result of their engagement in our program. You know, Head Start, when it was founded, it was an anti-poverty program.
Mhm.
And so that's something else that sets us apart from child care centers, right? And I try to, what I say, so for example, if a child were to go to an early Head Start center, and then they want to transition to Head Start, that's another application, another process. So one of the things that I think is really cool about Head Start and early Head Start, if you went to early Head Start and you did well, say that your mom or dad came in, didn't have a high school diploma or GED, we're helping them, you know, to set a goal and achieve. Many families have gotten better jobs as a result of, you know, working with their family engagement specialists, where they've got help with the resume, they are now employed, and they, you know, they work themselves out of poverty while they were enrolled in the program. I think of a story of a mom who wanted a credential for, it was, gosh, what can I say? It was like a healthcare, gosh, what's that? Coding. No, it was a healthcare, it was a billing and coding.
Okay.
So we found a local community college instructor who came to our center and taught classes. And I remember this parent got a certification as a medical biller and coder, and she was able to work from home, and her income while her child was in early Head Start precluded her from being able to enroll her child at Head Start. I thought it was a win because we were able to help this mom to get the certification, and as a result, her family was better off and exceeded the income level to enroll her child. So those are some of the things I would say that set us apart, that, you know, make a big difference from a child care center versus enrolling in Head Start or early Head Start.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that I noticed when I took over at SRCAA as executive director, was the fact that I had social workers on staff, MSWs in the Head Start program, and that they were making, like you said, these house visits, and they were working with the families on job placement. In fact, I think we even set it up where some of the parents would go to the Rowan Cabarrus Community College and get a child care credential, and then get hired by the program. You know, so I mean, put your money where your mouth is, and I think that's one of the great things about Head Start programs, is that it can, you know, it can try to break the cycle, because you can place not just the outcomes for the child, you know, but also the outcomes for the family, because you can't divorce the family's fate from the child's fate as regards to its, you know, life outcomes, because education doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? You have poverty, you have a house over your head, you've got nutrition, you've got all these other things that, you know, affect the outcomes. And you know, one of the things I do remember, and I thought it was great, is that Head Start is very big on outcomes. And I mean, obviously that's the headache if you're the administrator, because you've got to tell the funder, well, here are our outcomes, you know. But I do know that because children are very raw, right? Because that's the first place, you know, like you go into kindergarten, you at least have some measurement if you went to some kind of preschool academy or Head Start or something. But when you get into preschool, it's raw. I mean, this is baby to it could be baby if it's early child, or it's just, you know, baby, the kid is talking or maybe not talking, right? I mean, it's raw. And so when I remember I saw the numbers, I asked the director, give me the numbers here. So, because I was, you know, I do believe that if it's not measured, it doesn't exist, right? So I looked at it and I got all these zeros and ones, right? So first quarter is like on these battery of tests, these children are 0, 1, 0, 1, maybe there's a 2, there's a 3. At the end of the year, the curriculum year, they retested them, and the 3 was like the baseline. Some even went up to 5. It was on a scale 1 to 5. And it just kind of made me realize this really works. I mean, because again, I wasn't a dyed-in-the-wool early childhood advocate. I was a law professor, former law professor at a school that got, defunded. And, I was looking for a new position, something different to do. And I became I think that I became extremely converted to Head Start based on just being there and seeing, how powerful the outcomes are, from, just from sort of an objective, data-centric standpoint. But that being said.
Well, we also provide health services too and screen. And we have a new opportunity with Head Start, the North Carolina Lions Club or Lions Club International. They want to partner with us to go into the Head Start centers and test the children's eyes. It's not going to cost us anything. And then they help, if needed, to help get glasses or appointments and that kind of thing. So we're always looking for people that want to partner with us too, because we do provide that piece as well. And a lot of people don't realize that, we provide that piece. So, and that's an important, because education, health, parent involvement, and social services, you gotta, that's the 4 main components. So
no, you're right. They're all connected. I think on a previous episode, we had the executive director of America's Tooth Fairy on one of our episodes, and she talked about dental care, and oral health care. Well, the whole point was, oral health care is health care, but, the fact that they would go and provide, coordinate volunteer screening services for Head Start and early Head Start programs, because I think that's access to health care and health insurance and healthy outcomes are key. And I think that, that's just kind of been driving a lot of the healthcare topics now, these outcomes. And I think the fact that Head Start they're kind of catching this early on. And I think, Christy, you had mentioned that we serve children with disabilities, and I think one of the main things that I learned is that you've got to have 10% minimum, enrolled, children with disabilities. So the federal government's saying, not only do you need to screen for health, you need to screen for disabilities. And if they've got a disability, you've got to get them an IEP. I don't know or how old they are. You got to get an IEP, right? And I think that's a real key for outcomes, right? Because if children don't have the developmental disability identified at an early stage, it just kind of festers on into later on, So I think those are some great things there. There was another. Go ahead. No.
I was going to say, and you're required to do the whole child. So the whole child, their social and emotional, their health, that kind of thing. So, and it's important. So.
No, you're absolutely right. So there was another question I got when I took over, the action. So one was, what's the difference between childcare and Head Start, right? When I took over. Another one, and this was from some folks who, are a little more connected in the know. They said, well, I have a friend who works at Smart Start. Do you know him or her, right? And so I was like, well, Smart Start is not Head Start. And so maybe for the audience out there, maybe you could help explain for folks what exactly is the difference between Smart Start and Head Start. I think there are a lot of folks walking around right now who think they're the exact same thing.
They do.
Okay, so I'll take a stab at this first. So I think this is a really good question. Smart Start, one of the big things that they fund in our state is NC Pre-K. Some people know it as More at 4, and then Head Start. So Rocky, if I could talk about early Head Start, and NC Pre-K, is that okay?
Absolutely.
So early Head Start serves children birth up to 2 years old. Head Start serves children 3 to 4 years old. NC Pre-K, which is funded through Smart Start, to the program through Smart Start, serves 4-year-olds. Now, NC Pre-K has done more to align, I would say the services for NC Pre-K are closely aligned, but they're different. They have the 5 domains for school readiness, just like Head Start has. One of the big differences, Rocky, is funding that I like to talk about is through the Department of Health and Human Services. When you think about NC Pre-K and that funding, as state funding, one of the big differences for Head Start is funding comes straight from the federal government directly to the grantees who are serving those children. And I know when I say grantees, that may mean it could be a school grantee, it could be a community action, as Rocky mentioned earlier, it could be a for-profit or nonprofit entity. And in some places in North Carolina, we even have county governments that run the Head Start early. But one of the big distinguishing factors are how the program is funded versus state and then federal funding. That's one big thing. And I think, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think often when I look at state, like when I look at different committees or things that happen in our state around funding and services, I do think often people miss who Head Start is or what we do because we're not directly funded by the state. Although we receive funding sometimes, again, because we'll have many Head Start programs do also offer NC Pre-K slots for NC Pre-K children and are funded. But one of the things that I like to mention, this is something that we talk in our association about a lot, is usually Head Start receive the lowest amount of funding for NC Pre-K when we have children enrolled in that program. And there's a misnomer out there that Head Start has a lot of money and does not need, state supported funds to run the program. I do believe our requirements or outcomes that we mentioned earlier and the expectations are a little bit different. However, I think it's important to distinguish between the different programs, how they're funded are really huge. But I do like that there is some alignment, especially in the areas of curriculum. Did I do that justice, Christy? Did you want to add anything, or Rocky?
Yes, you did. The difference is, like Terry said, that we do get money from the federal government, but again, you've got to realize what we have to do with that money as far as staffing and that kind of thing. We have to have family engagement people. We have to have social workers. We're required to do that. We have to have family engagement specialists. So it's a different set of rules for us that we're following. And of course, anytime you get money from the federal government, there's going to be a laundry list of rules. But and as Terry alluded to, we do get lower amount of money for our NC Pre-K kids, even if they're served in a school setting or in one of the other entities that Terry shared. There was something else I was going to say. And
so just to confirm, because I guess, like sort of Smart Start. So from what I can see, so Smart Start, yeah, I know in most counties there's a Smart Start office. All right, so I guess that money is coming from Raleigh and not the feds. Would that be correct?
Correct.
And so I think that maybe one thing is, now when I think Terry had said that, so many Head Start programs actually do have NC Pre-K classrooms, right? In addition to the Head Start. I know you can't necessarily commingle them, but they're separate, right? Would that be correct to say?
Say that again, Rocky.
So if you're a Head Start program and you got NC Pre-K, you do have maybe a separate NC Pre-K classroom or classrooms in addition to the Head Start.
Well, not necessarily. It could be a little bit of both.
Okay.
Sometimes they may be dually enrolled, and then there are times where they are a Head Start program may serve NC Pre-K slots only, and so there may be multiple streams of funding that's coming in to support those children.
But you were saying that.
That's what I was going to say, that we also do subsidy.
Yeah.
So we also do, so the subsidy amounts are also, we do get that kind of money from the state when we do accept that. So.
the childcare vouchers that you're talking about, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but it is a separate funding stream, if that's
Mhm.
what you were asking
Yes.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that what you had mentioned, Terry, is that when the Smart Start program decides to fund a Head Start agency with NC Pre-K, you get less dollars than,
Yes, sir.
say, for instance, like if there was another nonprofit or a school system. So you've got maybe your local school and they're doing NC Pre-K, they will get the full amount of per seat. But then when it goes to Head Start, it's what, halved or quartered? I mean, or is it, does it, I mean, I don't know, is it different per county?
Well, it is different by county and it's different by grantee. So there is no exact formula, Rocky. There are, what I know, I can speak specifically for Durham County. A child care facility gets the highest level of funding. The school system is most school systems are slightly higher than Head Start, but most school systems do not get the full reimbursement either. And Head Start is usually the lowest of the three. Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, that sounds like something that definitely from the Head Start perspective, you know, that again, we've talked about how much more, you know, again, from both the health aspects, from the working with the families and the social and economic, you know, workforce development that goes on, that it, to me, you know, and again, I obviously have a little bit of a bias having been in the Head Start, you know, area, but one would say that it would maybe not really serve your purpose to give less money to the Head Start agency when they're actually doing more for the participants in that regard. Well, tell me, so Christy, maybe this might be a good chance to kind of highlight. So you go to Raleigh a bit, and maybe maybe this issue of the funding, again, I don't know if it's a county by county sort of thing, or maybe it's a state thing, but what, from the North Carolina Head Start Association perspective, what has been Raleigh's kind of response to both the funding for state Smart Starts and Head Starts, and to whatever extent any notion of a universal pre-K that I kind of started the show off talking about, you know, that there are entire states like Oklahoma, there's cities in the District of Columbia, obviously Durham County, and I believe in Mecklenburg as well, but as a statewide purpose. So kind of two questions.
Right. So the governor's budget has asked for $251 million for child development, and then going up to 276, you know, in 2023. And then the lottery money for pre-kindergarten would be starting at 100 million and go to 123, and then Smart Start 20 million. So, so it's always hard for us because when we're down there advocating, because we try to partner up with NC Child, the NC Early Ed Coalition, because for what they're lobbying for, and they're also lobbying for the same things, because we're funded mostly by the federal government and not from the state government. You know, sometimes they look at you like, well, we don't even fund you. Well, in a way you do, because we do NC Pre-K, so we want NC Pre-K slots. We would like to get more money allocated for us, because it's usually for the private, it's about $6,000 and some odd dollars. The school system, $5,000 some odd dollars, and then we get $4,000. So we get, you know, $2,000 less from just a child care center than, you know, other places do. You know, the North Carolina business leaders, you know, they've been a part of this also. They're advocating all the time as well. Jim Goodnight from SAS and some of them have said, you know, we want them to fund NC Pre-K at least at the 75%, where we're serving 75% of the children, because right now it's about 50%. We serve about 31,000 children, I believe, in NC Pre-K across the state of North Carolina. And we did drop around 9,000 children during the pandemic, but, you know, people lost their jobs. They did, you know, schools shut down, places shut down. A lot of them weren't doing NC Pre-K. You know, we still were doing as much as we could for NC Pre-K. Like I said, our sites were gathering packets of information, having parents drive through, pick them up. They were doing meals. the same types of things that our public school systems were doing, Head Start was doing for children all across North Carolina. We did not stop serving our children. Yes, some of it was virtual, but a lot of it was we were ordering stuff from some of the manufacturers of early childhood learning, packets to send to parents to do with their children, not home visits, but, you know, virtual visits, phone calls, that kind of thing. So I really think that we have a leg to stand on at the legislature. I'm glad that several legislators are on right now, and I really appreciate them being on. They are on, most of them, I believe, are on the Early Childhood Caucus that has been started again this year. And that means that they have an interest in early childhood, and we do too. And that's what we want to do. We want to serve more children and families. You know, it's over 30,000 people we serve when you include their families across North Carolina. So we do make an impact each day in the lives of children and families. And I really think that we need to look at the subsidy. I think that needs to go up so that we can serve more kids, because we do offer the wraparound. So, you know, we have our program from early in the morning, but we provide services, a lot of them till like, I think 6 o'clock. Is that correct, Terry? I think you have services till 6 o'clock. Some of them do summer care. And, you know, we don't, you know, a lot of people don't do summer care in Head Start. Head Start closes just like a school, but a lot of our grantees take it upon themselves to, you know, apply for some extra funding or figure out how they're going to fund it. And they do that for kids because they know that learning loss, you know, it's like I've said all year, the public school kids, K-12, lost a lot of work, a lot of education. But so did our preschool kids. They did too. Our kids entering kindergarten, they lost their 3-year-old year. They've been remote a part of this year. So they've also lost. So we have to make sure that we are getting those kids early, educating them as many as we can in what area we can, so that they will be kindergarten ready. You know, the General Assembly talks a lot about they want kids ready to read by 3rd grade.
Absolutely.
Well, I do too. As an advocate, as a mom, as a grandmother, I want all kids reading. And I also serve on the school board for my county. So I'm looking at all of that. So how many kids can we serve early so that we are preparing them for the rigorous curriculum that they're going to get the minute they step into a public school, because curriculum is rigorous. You know, I taught kindergarten. You don't play in kindergarten anymore. And, you know, that's another issue for another day. We need more play, but, you know, they read, they write, they do math, they do science, they do social studies. Yes, they get outside play, but it's all centered around a curriculum. And so those kids need to be ready. And so Head Start provides that rigorous curriculum that also has outcomes that thrust the child into kindergarten so that they are ready. So they make sure that they are kindergarten ready before they enter. So I just think that's important. And I really think the legislature really needs to look at that on how we fund and what we fund and what age kids we fund.
No, absolutely. I'll say one thing that I noticed when I came into sort of the early childhood world is that, as you mentioned, you know, child enters kindergarten through 12, it's very rigorous. But it's pre-K, right? Because like in North Carolina, there is a superintendent of public instruction. You know, I don't know if it's an elected office, but it's, you know, it's definitely a very formalized, centralized, you know, from 12 down to K, you know who the boss is, right? You know that what the regs and where the compliance and certifications are. Aside from childcare licensing law, between 0 and 5 or 4, you know, the 0 to 5 area, there really isn't a superintendent for early childhood education, or there isn't sort of a central body. I always kind of looked at it as almost a little bit like the Wild West in many respects from the 0 to 5 educational range. I mean, you have a large player like Head Start in many counties. You have a number of schools that are doing, you know, funded through the NC Pre-K. you have some sort of some independent nonprofits that are there who are maybe what they call NACI accredited or something like that are providing high quality things and getting but there doesn't seem to, from my vantage point, there isn't sort of a there isn't sort of a, to whatever extent there is a coordinating body, but there's nothing as centralized as the Department of Public Instruction, right? There isn't something and so my question, and maybe this will be an opportunity for those who are in the legislative body, is there any movement towards coordinating? Because again, I think this would help answer questions of funding, of coordinating and credentializing, or at least getting quality control over the 0 to 5 education range in North Carolina.
Hey, I know you'll probably want some lawmakers to say something, or I'm not sure, but listen, I do want to say something. And I was sitting here thinking, you're reading my mind, Rocky. This may even be a little confrontational or whatever. I'll just say this, and that is, there was a time in North Carolina where DPI oversaw child care, or what some people consider as child care. And so from my perspective, also as the president of the Head Start Association, I'm not speaking for any other, just in my role, I do believe DPI, well, this is me saying, is probably the best entity. And we've talked about this a lot in Head Start, is the best entity to oversee it. Because when I think about, the Department of Public Instruction is charged with implementing the state's public school laws, policies, procedures, and all of that, right? But I feel like Department of Child Development and Early Education, we refer to as DCDEE, I think where they regulate, or they license centers, right, to operate child care centers, I think their primary responsibility is health and safety, which is health and safety is important. But when I think about the curriculum, when I think about the rigorous things that child care centers, Head Start, Early Head Start are doing in this 0 to 4 world, right, to that child turns 5 before pre-K, if we're going to be serious about these outcomes, I think about brain development as well, right? 90% of a child's brain development occurs by the age of 5. So when I think about that, and how it's important for them to be in quality settings, right? When I think about that, I believe, and again, that DPI, Department of Public Instruction, is more ready and capable to oversee this type work versus DCDEE. Now that may get me in trouble, but that's what I say. That's what I believe.
Well, I think you're onto something here, Terry, because I think that's the crux of it, and from my perspective, right? I mean, it's is that you don't see DCDEE in the 3rd grade, right? They're not there monitoring 3rd grade teachers, and they're not looking at the door and the width and the thing, but they are doing that to child care centers, and they are managing the child care licensing issues. And I think it comes down to that notion of, is early childhood education child care, or is it truly education, right? And I think there's that. I think there has, and I do think that there is a movement towards accepting that the 0 to 5 range is education, and it's not just cradle, child care. And I think that is, there has to be a paradigm shift in the thinking about 0 to 5 education, and that word education should actually be attached to 0 to 5, that it is not. And I think if that kind of thing could happen, then I think that the shift in who regulates, because I think sometimes you can kind of tell the policy, the priorities and the policies by who regulates, right? And I think that's your point, Terry, is that we've got childcare facilities, the DCDEE overseeing the schooling of children 3 to 5 and such. And so I think this is, and we're getting close to the end here, but I think if there are any, to the extent that you are able to chat about this topic, be great to kind of hear some thoughts, or maybe some things that are going on behind the scenes, because we like to get the scoop here on the leadership series if we can.
I'll weigh in if you don't mind, Rocky.
Hi.
I'm Julie Von Haefen. I'm a state legislator from Wake County, and I'm one of the bipartisan co-sponsors of House Bill 574, which, along with Representative Willis, I think is on the call, to raise child care subsidy rates in North Carolina. And I know Christy mentioned subsidies, and I know it's a little bit more along, like the childcare providers and those kind of things, but that's been mentioned here. So I just wanted to mention that bill and make sure you all were aware of it. I also just wanted to tell Terry that that is not a controversial statement, that a lot of people agree with you. And again, I think it's just moving away from this thought of childcare as a childcare worker. We have to stop using that terminology and use that they're early education teachers or they're early educators. And I think that, like what you said, the fact that we still have like the 0 to 5 ages under both DHHS and DPI, it is way too complicated and confusing. And we all know a lot of these terms, but I mean, for people who don't, it is an overwhelming and daunting thing to really get into. And I'm still learning, I'm third year in the legislature. I learn things every single day, including today on this call. So it's just, we have to simplify it. And I think part of that is putting it in one department or the other. And you're absolutely right that if we're going to look at this space as education, it has to go into education, not, and I know DHHS has some role over licensure, but it's complicated and it's going to take a lot of these conversations to keep going. So, and I love David Willis said he agrees. So I'm happy to say that there's agreement on both sides of the aisle about that. And I know we'll keep working. So thank you for everyone contributing to the conversation.
I just want to echo
Yes,
that. I just want to echo that and just say, I was on a call recently, and this is one of the things we talked about. What if we considered, in early education, right, as faculty, how we think of schools. When I think about Head Start, most of our teachers have birth decay license. Many are trained just like the school system. And they refer to themselves as faculty, but we call them, like you said, represented that are childcare workers. They are more than that. And when we debase, early educators, as we do in this childcare, in the 0 to 5 world, it's how we see the people that we employ, that we serve and work. Is how they potentially will see themselves. And we have to elevate our thinking. I won't go on, but I love this old quote by Frederick Douglass that it's easier to build strong children than to repair broken men, right? So if we're gonna take this serious, we have to do that and not do business as usual. Okay, I'm getting all involved. But yeah, just something to think about.
Yes, and Representative Von Haefen, we do know about that bill. Yes, so we are tracking, several bills, and I disseminate that information to our grantees every week of what bills and what's happened with them and everything. And we do appreciate your leadership on that.
Any other here's an opportunity now. We've got legislatures. We've got obviously folks from the North Carolina Head Start Association. So those of you who are here, you can unmute yourself, ask a question, or put it in the chat, because this is a great opportunity to get your interaction here.
I just want to thank Representative Ager also. I see that has been on the call. So thank you for attending, Representative. I appreciate it. And this is Macy that just unmuted herself and showed her face. She's going to be our new North Carolina Head Start Collaboration Director, and we are super, super excited.
And I am as well. So I look forward to meeting everyone, working with everyone. June the 7th will be my first day with DPI, and I am ready to hit the ground running. And for those of you who do not know me, I have over 30 years in early child care experience and early childhood experience. I lived in Raleigh for 13 years, so I'm familiar with that area, and Fuquay Arena and Holly Springs and all of those lovely little places that were so small that they had 2 roads when I moved there, and now they're just sprawling. So I'm looking forward to being back in that area, and I'm available if anyone needs to talk to me. Thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? I mean, we're a really relaxed show. There's not a super you want to do crazy protocol here. It's an opportunity, to just, if you've got some thoughts to share or anything that you'd love to just, you've got the folks who know here. You got Christy, Terry, legislator, Macy. I mean, you got so speak now, forever hold your peace.
Well, I just want to say thanks for this opportunity, Rocky, to speak to legislators and to speak with some of our colleagues. This is important work that we're doing, and we really are making a difference. I reflect on my own experience being in Head Start as a 4-year-old, and I'm better off, as a result of that. When I think about my siblings who also went to Head Start, I'm grateful for the opportunity, but I'm even more grateful to be able to serve children and families. And this was just a great call. So thank you for making it possible.
No, thank everybody here. Oh,
yeah, Macy was also a Head Start child.
Thank you, Christy. I was getting ready to chime in and say, I'm a product of Head Start as well. And
Collaboration director, and Terry's a CEO, and so we do great things with Head Start. We're Head Start strong.
Well, Terry, I don't know if I can follow up on what you said there for your closing here. And so really, unless there are any other comments from our audience, I just want to thank everybody for taking time out of your busy Wednesday to join us for another episode of our Hull & Chandler Leadership Series. As a heads up, we're going to do a special episode. We usually do them stagger them 2 weeks, but Shannon, we're going on next Wednesday?
Yes, on June 2nd at 1 o'clock.
Okay, June 2nd, back to our regular time of 1 o'clock. And for those of you here in the Charlotte area, we're going to keep the theme on education, but obviously if you are in the Charlotte area, there's some issues with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg School and the Mecklenburg County government about funding. And so our guests will be representatives from My Brother's Keeper of Charlotte. It's a new nonprofit that has been started to focus on the educational outcomes of young Black and other persons of color children. And so we're going to be kind of diving into that particular topic next week. So again, funding and education, it's peanut butter and jelly. You can't have one without the other. And so for those of you who are definitely, or just want to learn more about an issue going on, but we're going to be definitely doing a deep dive in that. So if you have interest in sort of Charlotte area educational policy, you'll definitely want to reach out to Shannon for a link to that particular Zoom. And to those of you, again, thank you for coming for today's show. Please support the North Carolina Head Start Association. Terry, Christy, do you have like a website they could go on to get more information? Maybe click a donate now button, the good things.
We do have a website.
Oh, go ahead, Christy.
Yes. Do you want me to put it in the link in the chat, or you want me? How are you going to do that? How do you want that?
You can just put it in the chat. That'd be great.
Okay.
See if it pops up in the chat. Yeah, definitely check out their website. And again, they are 501c3, so you can any charitable donations you make to the North Carolina Head Start Association. Obviously, it's going to be going to a good purpose. And if you're not doing the standard deduction, at least you can claim a charitable deduction on your next year's taxes. So I think is it up yet, or
it's coming? There we go.
Oh, there it is. So if you guys look into the chat, it's https headstartnc.org. And if you want to reach out to a legislator, Representative Von Haefen has put down her email as well. So, it's an important topic, and thank you everybody for showing that you care. This discussion is far from over, and the actions are far from over. And I hope to maybe do a recap with Christy and Terry, maybe and Macy, you know, maybe a year from now to kind of see where we've gone, maybe at the end of the session or afterwards, and kind of see what we've accomplished here in North Carolina and where we're going. Because, you know, it's all about continuous improvement, right? Remember Head Start, you know, continuous improvement and where you're, you know, so we'll see what our outcomes are again. I'd love to have you guys back on in a future episode. So
Sure.
Thank you.
anyway, thank you everybody for coming on board today, and have a great rest of your week.
Okay, thank you. You too.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.